Hello, and welcome to A Sunny Book Nook. Today I wanted to bring to you a recommendations list of underrated books written by women authors. I'm in a little bit of a different location today, sitting on the floor. If you've been subscribed to this channel or watching it for a while, thank you for being here, and also you're probably familiar with this spot now. But anyways, I wanted to bring to you this list because I was looking at books on my shelf and I was like, so many of these are ones that I haven't heard anyone really talk about that much, or ever, or I've only seen a couple people to talk about them, but they're all so delightful and amazing. I enjoy and would recommend all of these books. Obviously that's why they're in the recommendation list, but my personal enjoyment of them, we're going in like an escalating order, so watch all the way to the end for like my favorites of this stack. So let's just get right into it. The first book I want to talk about is What We Lose by Zinzi Clemmons. This book is about a young woman who is dealing with grief and loss. Her mother dies of cancer and she is an undergraduate and she goes back home. She's dealing with grief with her father and she's from South Africa, and there's a lot of sort of historical explanation and cultural realities of being from Johannesburg. This is a really, really solid sort of literary fiction book about a young woman coming to terms with mental health issues and family issues and generational trauma. I actually met the author at a book signing and a book talk, and she is delightful and a really sweet person from what I can tell. So definitely check this book out if you haven't heard of it, or if it seems interesting to you. Yeah, I just feel like not that many people have talked about it. I also did a makeup look based off of this book like a couple years back, I think. So the next book I want to talk about is Self-Care by Leigh Stein. This book is very girl boss, like gaslight, gatekeep, girl boss. Like, this book is like all of these things. Basically, it's another sort of literary fiction, millennial young woman sort of story, but we're kind of following these alternating perspectives of these two white women who run a like self-care brand app company thing, and it's about as bullshit as you think it is. But the book is ultimately about the bullshit, pulling back the layers of the bullshit. We are seeing our main character's struggles with money and sex and family and love and everything, right? So one of our main characters is like not in front of the camera. She's more behind the scenes, and she struggles with her weight and like isn't skinny, is in a long-term relationship with this guy who, it's like a sort of mediocre relationship at this point. And then the other sort of CEO of the company is like the one who is in front of the camera. She's like the face of the company, and she's like really skinny and definitely has an eating disorder. And wait, oh my god, I'm realizing I'm not wearing any lip product. It's fun and slay to be fun and slay, you know what I mean? That doesn't mean anything. But yeah, I'm using this NARS Air Matte lip color in the shade Lose Control. Okay, lip product on. I was like, something feels not right, and that was it. Like, you can't just have a full face of makeup and not have something on your lips, you know what I mean? I mean, you can, I guess, there's no rules, but I don't feel right. Anyways, what the fuck was I talking about? Oh, right. Self-care. So, and then the other character is the one who's like, very like the face of the company. And we also get the perspective of one of the workers at the HQ of this company named Khadija, and she is a black woman, one of the only black women at this company, one of the only women of color at this company, at the HQ level. And it sort of jumps between these women's perspectives and their anxieties and their issues. The skinny one, who's like the face of the company, is seeing this guy who's one of the investors of the company, who like likes to have sex with her when she pretends to be dead or something. It's like weird, okay? It's very strange, and like if you're into more dark, gritty, but like also irreverent books, you should definitely check out Self-Care. It's very anxiety inducing, but it is ultimately about like mentally unwell young women. And in like the social media age, there's a lot of discussion about like race and gender and feminism and shit like that, but from this sort of social media technological lens almost. At the very beginning of the book, the behind the scenes CEO, she got a viral tweet about killing the president or whatever. And this is set during like the 2016 like Trump election, like whatever, right? That political climate. And that it blows up. We never know what the actual tweet said, but like it's a whole thing. And yeah, it's just all about social media, but not in that way, I guess. I think that the way that it talks about the tokenization and like the absolute inanity of modern life as like a young woman navigating like social media, I thought it was pretty well done and enjoyable. The next book that is written by a woman that I think doesn't get enough hype, or that people sort of like to criticize, is The Subtweet by Vivek Shraya. This book is about these two like young women of color in the music industry, in like the underground indie music scene, and they have beef with each other because someone subtweeted them. One of them subtweeted the other person. Again, it's about like social media and the sort of microcosmic community that is like this city's indie underground like band, because basically one of these artists covers the other artist's song, and that cover kind of goes viral and it gets played on the radio and everyone loves it. It is sort of about their tense relationship and dynamic. The author of this, I think, is trans, and she is a really prolific writer, but I think this is one of the only things I've read by her, and I really enjoyed it, actually. And the cover is so nice. I love Manjeet Thop's illustrations. I've like bought stuff from her shop before, but I actually really enjoyed this, and I thought that it was sort of, it had this like removed, colder tone of voice, while also looking into the psyche of these two artists, these two musicians, in a really interesting way. So yeah, I liked it, and I don't think it gets enough hype. The next book I want to talk about is These Ghosts Are Family by Maisy. This book is about a Caribbean family going back for a funeral, I think. It is a generational family story, and we are following the perspectives of the people who like left the island, and then the kids of the people who left the island, and like their lives, basically. It is very much a kind of sad and gloomy story, but it's not entirely so. But basically we kind of jump between times, sort of, but it's more about the interwoven narratives and tales of the different members of this family, and I really enjoyed it. I thought it was well done. It sort of talks about death and grief, and also family, and like lost family members, or like secret family members, in a really interesting way. So would definitely recommend this, and I think it deserves more hype. The next book I want to talk about is Chemistry by Weike Wang. This book is about a Chinese American PhD student who has a really complicated relationship with her parents, and it's about her like not really feeling enough, and then also getting really burnt out at her program, at her PhD program, and basically dropping it, and also being in a relationship with this guy, this white guy, who is like perfect, but she feels weird about it. And it's about her looking back on their relationship, her looking back on her childhood and her previous experiences, and navigating mental illness and trauma. And it's written in a way that sort of like there's not really any quotation marks for the dialogue. It kind of jumps around a lot. The sentences will feel kind of disparate from each other, but then will come together to make a larger point. It's kind of metaphorical, but in like a STEM kind of way. It's about our main character sort of jumping around in her different relationships, trying to figure out what's up and what she actually cares about. It really hit close to home, and I think it is an underrated novel about a young woman trying to find her way. Now, time to get into some more speculative things, I think the next few books will be. But this book that I want to talk about is Naamah by Sarah Blake, which a couple years ago when I started this channel, I made like a full-length video review of this. And Sarah Blake is a wonderful author. She and I have like talked. She sent me her most recent release, which I talked about in my vlog, my most recent vlog. But this is a book that sort of retells the story of Noah and the Ark, but from the perspective of Noah's wife, who in the Bible or the Torah is unnamed, and her name is Naamah. Obviously, as the title would suggest, it takes this queer, feminist, surrealist perspective on the very classic story of Noah and the Ark, and it's beautifully written and very dreamy and watery and spiritual. I really enjoyed it, and I don't think enough people talk about it. Next, I have another book called Light from Uncommon Stars, which is one that I've talked about recently, and I think I did a book look of it recently on my Instagram as well. But this book is about a young Vietnamese, I think, trans girl who is running away from home, and she's in California, I think, trying to find her place. And then there's also the perspective of this Japanese violin teacher who used to be like a pro but has sold her soul to the devil and now needs to bring 7 prodigy violinists to the devil to like trade for her soul. Like, it's a whole situation, okay? But then there's also a third storyline about an alien spaceship that takes over running a donut shop. So it's very fun and sweet and touching, but also explores a lot of heavier themes and talks about music in this really beautiful way. And our author is trans and Asian as well, so that's interesting. I featured 2 trans women Asian authors on this list. But yeah, this is a great book, and published by Tor, of course. I think that it's like just light enough, like sci-fi magical realism, that it's not overwhelming. The way that the magic and the science is integrated into the story, it's still very essential to the arc, and all the characters are very sweet. Their relationships with each other are also really sweet. This is also a sapphic book too, so I don't feel like I hear anyone talk about this, so check it out. The next book I want to talk about is Black Girl Unlimited by Echo Brown. I think I've heard a couple people talk about this, but it was a while back, I think. This is another magical realism story. It seems semi-autobiographical. It's about growing up in the east side of Cleveland, and our main character, Echo, transfers to the private white rich school in town, and her mother and people in her community suffer from a form of addiction that is sort of magical realismized in this story, but also Echo has this like power to be able to experience the world in a different way. So the way that magic and identity and trauma is in family relationships and one's own relationship with oneself is explored in this book is so tender and beautiful. The community relationships going on and the perspective of Echo, it's just very deeply poetic, and the voice of the writing feels very strong. So I would definitely recommend this, and I think more people should pick it up. The next book I want to recommend is Starlings by Jo Walton. This is a short story collection of sci-fi, fantasy, speculative, surrealist short stories that I feel like are so underrated. I think my favorite short story is definitely Sleeper, but so many of these are really, really wonderful and smart and play with form and structure in a really interesting way. And yeah, Jo Walton is a brilliant writer, so definitely check this book out if you like short story collections that are more speculative. And my last speculative sci-fi-ish book I have on this list is The Ones We're Meant to Find by Joan. I feel like everyone loves this book cover, but I love the book too. Like, not to be special or whatever, but no, I think that the story of these 2 sisters trying to find each other, one of them waking up abandoned on an island with the only sense of like, okay, well, I need to go find my sister, and the other sister being someone who has lost said sister over the past year, and they're living in an eco city. The 2 sisters' dad is like a researcher, scientist with the government and sort of science research teams that allow these people, these residents, to live, essentially, and they sort of engineer the mechanisms by which people can survive. It is a really compelling read, I think, narratively. All of the family relationships here and the emotional ties between all of the characters to each other feels so vibrant and strong and real. It's so sharply set against the background of the world that is crumbling around them with the technology and sci-fi magical realism elements infused so well. And I think the way that this book talks about like technology and technological scientific development and cloning and the morality of all of these things, and whether like humans are like worth saving, or and what does that mean, what does that look like, how do you go about that, and how do you navigate like being in the public eye when you know that that's not the kind of person you are, and comparing yourself to a sibling. And then also it's about grief as a story. It's about grieving the death of your sister, grieving the death of your mother, because these two girls lost their mother outside of the time frame of the book itself. But it is so good, and the fact that it alternates between the two perspectives of the sisters is also something that I really enjoy. But yeah, I just don't think it gets enough hype. I think a lot of people were like disappointed by it because they didn't really know what to expect going in. And you know, it's not like I knew what I was going to expect going in, but what I found and what I got out of it was something that I really appreciated. And I don't think enough people like really appreciated it in a way that like I wish they would. But also like, okay, I just realized the illustration on the back of this book of, because there's the water and the boat and then the city with like the eco city. That's so cool. Oh my gosh, it's beautiful not only in the visual packaging of the story, but also, oh, and this is the other side, because this is the perspective that one sister gets, right? Because she's living on like this cliffside in this little house by the ocean trying to find her sister, and then the other sister is on this side across the ocean in this city. Anyway, very beautiful science fiction, I think young adult-ish novel that I don't think is appreciated enough for its contents. And finally, we have the most important book on this list, I think. It is a straight up just like literary fiction novel, so there's no like magic or anything in it, if that's not your thing, but it is Everyone in This Room Will Someday Be Dead by Emily Austen. This book is like literally so good. Like I don't know how much I can reiterate how good this book is. Like I'm fucking obsessed with it. And every person that I've recommended this to is also obsessed with it. Mostly because I keep on recommending this to like lesbians and other sapphics and stuff. But yeah, it's basically about our main character who is an atheist lesbian who ends up getting a job working as a secretary at a church, at a Catholic church. And all the hijinks that occur among that, because she is very deeply mentally ill, but her like family doesn't really get it. And she has a lot of sort of compulsive behaviors and a lack of her own emotional understanding. She's like very mentally ill in many ways. She doesn't really know how to deal with it, you know, and it sort of manifests in her accidentally posing as an old dead lady who used to be the old receptionist at the church, because she feels really bad that there's these emails from the dead lady's friend in the church inbox, and she sees all of their like sort of correspondence to each other, and she's like, how am I going to tell her friend that her friend is dead and now I'm taking over as the receptionist? So she ends up sort of just pretending to be the old lady who died. So yeah, and she gets in a lot of situations kind of similar to that. She starts dating this girl that she met on a dating app and named Eleanor, I think, and they have a sort of difficult relationship and dynamic because of the mental illness of our main character, basically. And she also gets roped into like dating this guy who's like a total asshole because she needs to be seen as like straight for the sake of keeping this job at this church. But I think that all of the characters in this book are so deeply endearing and sweet, and the story itself is so sweet. It kind of reminds me of Eleanor Oliphant is Totally Fine, I think is the book, is completely okay. I'm forgetting the title, but this is also a book that with a long title, Everyone in This Room Will Someday Be Dead. Our main character is like very much obsessed with death and like the fact that everyone's going to die basically, and how like nothing matters, and because she's just very neurotic. So yeah, I think this book is like so deeply relatable and human and touching and makes you smile, but also makes you like want to cry in the best possible way. But I love this book so much, and it's so good. Those are all the books that I recommend because I think they're underrated. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please like and subscribe if you haven't already, and I will see you in my next video. Oh, you can find me on all my social medias and everywhere else in the description down below, as always. So yeah, thank you so much for watching. Bye!